you have money, real money, maybe $500,000 sitting across a few accounts, a high-yield savings account, a money market, maybe a CD or two. And on paper, it looks responsible. It looks disciplined. But here's what nobody tells you. If the bulk of that wealth is still parked in savings instruments, you are slowly, quietly losing the wealth game, not because you're spending recklessly, because you're not deploying capital. And those are two very different kinds of failure. Here's the environment we're operating in right now. Interest rates have shifted, inflation has eaten into real purchasing power, and the average savings account, even a high-yield one, is still trailing the actual cost of living. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 has historically compounded at roughly 10% annually over long periods. So the gap between saving and investing isn't just a finance concept. It's a mathematical leak in your net worth. Every year you delay the transition, you are choosing stability over growth. And at a certain level of wealth, that is no longer a cautious decision. It's an expensive one. Most people at the $500,000 plus level aren't stuck because they don't know what an index fund is. They're stew. Maybe CK because saving feels like control and investing feels like exposure. And that feeling is not irrational, it's just misapplied. When your money sits in a savings account, nothing fluctuates. You open the app, the number is there, it's calm, it's predictable. But investing? Your portfolio drops 8% on a Wednesday because of a Fed statement, and suddenly everything feels fragile. The problem is you're measuring the wrong thing. Short-term volatility is not the same as long-term risk. In fact, for someone with a 15 or 20-year horizon, the real risk isn't market swings. It's sitting still while inflation quietly hollows out your purchasing power. That gap is not theoretical. It is the actual cost of psychological comfort. Here's the framework I'd walk through with anyone making this shift. Most people think about money in two buckets, savings and spending, but sophisticated investors think in three. The first is your liquidity reserve, 3 to 6 months of real operating expenses held in cash or near cash. This never gets touched. It's not an opportunity fund, it's an insurance policy. Its job is to protect every other decision you make. The second bucket is your capital reserve, the ocean layer. For someone at the $500,000 to $2 million range, this might be treasury bonds, short duration fixed income, or I-bonds, instruments that preserve real value without significant downside exposure. Not exciting, necessary. The third bucket is your growth engine. This is where investing actually happens. Broad-based index funds, diversified equity positions, real assets, and here's the discipline that separates people who build wealth from people who just accumulate it. The growth bucket gets funded consistently regardless of what the market is doing that month. If you invest $2,000 a month into a diversified equity index, you buy more shares when markets are down and fewer when they're up. Over a decade, this mechanical discipline outperforms most active strategies not because it's clever, but because it's consistent. There is a version of keep it simple that means index funds and a target date portfolio. That's fine for someone just starting out, but at the $500,000 to $10 million level, simple means something more specific. Low cost, tax efficient, broadly diversified, and structurally aligned with your actual time horizon. Tax efficiency alone is worth a full conversation. Moving M. B. 1E from a taxable account into investments without thinking about capital gains, tax loss harvesting, or Roth conversion windows can cost you tens of thousands of dollars in unnecessary liability. The investment decision and the tax decision are the same decision. They cannot be separated. Warren Buffett has said for decades that low-cost index funds beat the vast majority of active managers over long periods. He's right, but the people this advice is designed for are those with $5,000 to invest, not $500,000. At your level, the structure around the investment, the accounts, the tax strategy, the rebalancing schedule matters just as much as what you're buying. I want to tell you about a pattern I see over and over again. Someone spends 20 or 30 years building a business, a career, a practice. They are relentlessly disciplined. They save aggressively. They sacrifice. And then they reach a number $800,000, $1.2 million, $2 million, and they stop, not because they've achieved financial freedom, but because the money finally feels real enough that losing any of it feels catastrophic. And so they hold. They wait for the right moment. They watch markets climb without them, and B, they tell themselves they're being prudent. What they're actually doing is making a fear-based decision and calling it a strategy. The shift from saving to investing is not really a financial decision. It's a decision about what kind of future you're willing to build. Stability is not the same as security. Real security, generational security, comes from assets that compound over decades, not from a savings account that keeps pace with nothing. The people who figure that out early don't just retire comfortably. They build something that outlasts them. So here's the question I want to leave you with. If someone looked at your entire financial picture right now, every account, every allocation, would they say your money is positioned to grow or positioned to survive? Because those are not the same thing. And at this stage of the game, you shouldn't have to choose between them. If this reframes something for you, hit subscribe. The people in this community are thinking seriously about wealth, not just accumulating it, but deploying it intelligently. Drop a comment below. Are you still primarily in the saving stage, or have you made the shift? I read every response. Sonnet 46 Claudia.